Hello, my name is Mark Hausammann, and for this episode of the Community Forum, we're going to be talking about Stoughton veterans and various aspects of what the veterans have been up to in Stoughton over the past year or so. And we have some guests on, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, starting with Mike Pazyra.
Hi, I'm Mike Pazyra. I'm the Veterans Officer for the town. I've been in that position for 12 years. I served 2 years in the Marine Corps from 1973 to 75, and it's an honor to be here.
I'm Carin Clipp. I'm the incoming commander for the AmVets post here in 1977 in Stoughton. I have honorably served in the Air National Guard from 76 until this year. I will be retiring officially as a Master Sergeant.
Good morning, Bernard Planeta. I served in the Air Force for 4 years, 3 years overseas. I am the incoming AmVets District 6 Commander, and I am a local businessman.
And just to introduce myself again, I'm Mark Hausammann, and I'm a Vietnam-era veteran. I served and I grew up in Stoughton, but I served from 1966 through 1969. Most of that service was in Southeast Asia. So we're here, and we're going to begin to talk about various subjects that are interesting to the town and also have a lot to do with veterans. So I'd like to start it off with the Memorial Day Parade. As most people know, Stoughton is really committed to that parade. No matter what the weather, no matter what goes on, the parade goes on, and we do a little bit of the work, and I think the first thing that gets it really kicked off is the flagging of the graves. So Mike, you know what that is. Maybe you can just give us a little background on what goes on there and where we do that.
Okay, sure. Since I've been the Veterans Officer since 2005, we've had a lot of participation from Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, and other people. We put an ad in the Penny Saver, and we get an awful lot of participation for the reflagging of these graves. I guess in the old days, I was told there would be a handful of veterans that would do this, and it would take them all day, basically, to reflag these graves. At this point, it takes us, I would say maybe 45 minutes. Now, what we do is the Saturday before Veterans Day and the Saturday before Memorial Day is when we do this. Now, we have a Veterans Graves Officer who's not here, Michael Bodette, and Stoughton has 9 cemeteries, and he reflags 7 of those cemeteries on his own. But we have this community participation on those Saturdays before the Veterans Day and Memorial Day. And we get through and we have such a great crowd, and it's wonderful to see the kids there. This is obviously replayed on SMAC. It'll be coming up soon from last Saturday's reflagging. And afterwards we have a nice coalition at the VFW where we have Shirley Temples for the kids and donuts and coffee and that type of thing. So it's a great community event, and every year it seems to get more and more community participation. So the veterans community is very grateful for that.
You know, and I'd just like to interject, too, that it's probably appropriate to say thank you to all of these little groups, particularly the young children that come out. It's not only, helping with the reflagging the graves, but it also gives them a sense of the numbers of veterans that Stoughton has that have passed and are in these cemeteries. The children get to see what it takes to make a country such as ours. So the other thing is, can you kind of walk us through the parade route? I know that we go to a couple of cemeteries, and why we go there.
Well, the parade route, basically what it is now, we start for Memorial Day, we start at the Public Works Building, and we go down to the Holy Sepulchre Cemetery, where there are 2 lots. There's an American Legion lot and a VFW lot, and we have 2 very similar ceremonies there. And we can get into this in more detail if we have time. From there, the parade proceeds down Central Street, bangs left on Pearl Street, and there's a short ceremony at the old Pearl Street Cemetery where the rifles are fired in honor of those fallen there. Obviously, that's an older cemetery. There's Revolutionary War people in that cemetery. Then we proceed to the Town Hall, where we have what I would say would be our main ceremonies, where we have them. We have speeches, we try to introduce people. We were fortunate enough, there's still some World War II veterans around. At the end of the parade, We were able to bring up 3 World War II veterans. From then we move on to Faxon Veterans Memorial Park, where we have some wreath layings at the 2 monuments there. And from there we would proceed up onto Evergreen Cemetery, where we have a ceremony at the GAR lot, the old Grand Army of the Republic lot, where we read the Gettysburg Address. Howard Hanson does that. And then we have a final ceremony right across from the town spa where the big flagpole is. That's the American Legion lot at that cemetery. You know, participants, we have the high school band, we have fire, we have police, of course, we have our veterans groups. We get volunteers like Dave Sheehan to help with traffic control as well, to help the police out. We have our Cub Scouts, our Girl Scouts, our Boy Scouts, and special speakers. We get state reps. It's one of the biggest events that Stoughton has on an annual basis.
Yeah, and it's really quite the community participation. You know, I march in the parade, and I have been doing it for years, and to look out and see, you know, the members of the community come out, and children are clapping, and some of them are dressed with red, white, and blue. It really does make a nice way to kick off the summer. Most of us enjoy the summer, and this Memorial Day parade gets that all started. So I thought we might move on a little bit, and a lot of you might not know, but all of us sitting here are members of the American Veterans Organization, and in fact we have with us Carin, who is actually going to be taking over as the post commander in Stoughton. So I thought we might want to talk a little bit about the outreach, and I'm going to kind of open that up to the group, just so you can, you know, hear what we do. Like there's things, maybe Bernie, you can talk about, you know, some of the fundraisers that we do and why we do them. I mean, that's probably the most important things. I mean, we need to raise funds to assist us in our outreach efforts to other veterans. So if you can talk a little bit about some of the fundraising activities that we do.
Sure. We just recently held a penny sale at the Randolph AmVets, and it was interesting that a lot of people don't know what the term penny sale stands for. It's an indoor flea market, if you will. But when I was growing up in Northeast Connecticut, they held penny sales all the time. And I thought that would be an idea for us to raise some money. And the reason we need funding is because we go to the VA hospital twice a month. I've been doing it every month now for 12 years. We serve ice cream, cake, and soda on one occasion, and another we bring in pizza, chicken wings, or other types of food, to give the veterans there, especially those who are long-term, a little bit of enjoyment for a little while. Now, in addition to that, we put on a huge cookout for as many patients at the hospital as possible in September at the Brockton VA Hospital. We also do a Christmas party for the 2 groups. Last year we gave out over $1,200 of new items, plus a lot of other items. In addition to that, we bring the patients on a bus to the Randolph AmVets at least 4 times a year for a home-cooked meal. We've got a cookout planned for a couple of weeks from now, and then we'll do another cookout as well for the other group. We are going to be involved in cruise night at Gillette Stadium in 2 weeks, or maybe even 1 week, I guess, because it was rained out a week ago, where we help them walk around selling raffle tickets, and we get 50% of the collections. So we do need funding. All these things cost money, and occasionally we get involved in soliciting outside of supermarkets. It's a fun experience, it's very enjoyable, and it takes a little while of a veteran's time.
Hey Mike, one of the other things that comes up is that we do, like at the holiday season, we bring over little gifts for the veterans that are there, just so that they have a sense of, you know, celebrating the holidays. And I think some of the local stores participate or give us some goods. I'm not sure if that's true, whether they help with some of the costs, but I don't know if we might plug somebody, a local guy or gal, that helps out with that.
Yeah, sure. We had Boston Interiors donate $1,000 this year, a random donation. There was the Prone Family Foundation, which I had donated some money to our organization. You know, we find money from various sources, and for whatever reason, you know, we always seem to have, you know, you can always use more money because the more money you have, the more you can do. But, you know, people are very generous when it comes to veterans causes, and, you know, people obviously have to be careful of who they're donating to. But little things like standing outside of Bob's Food Mart or outside at Dunk's, you know, we raise enough money to be able to provide quite a bit of services to those, you know, poorer veterans. And when I say poor, I don't mean, you know, financially, but, you know, these are people who, they've served their country. They're all, if they're at the VA hospital, they're at least 70% service-connected disabled, that they're permanent residents. They're a lot of the people that we see, and they're in pretty, you know, rough shape. So the little bit that we can do for them is great. And so, you know, the people I mentioned, it's, you know, we're always grateful to take, well, to take their money isn't the right word, but we're always grateful for those donations.
So that, I mean, that, just to summarize, we have, you know, the visits to the hospital, we have off-post events that we run, and the Stoughton AmVets provides a lot of support and volunteers. So it's not just the 4 of us that go. There's others. Some of them, you know, will drive and pick up the supplies so that we can have them there in time. So we try to spread it around and use as many volunteers, veterans volunteers, as we can. And it's an acknowledgement of Stoughton that we're able to continually support something. Like Bernie says, for 12 years, we've been supporting the veterans in that hospital. And it's an acknowledgement of this town that we're able to operate in such a way. And that, you know, as far as fundraising goes, if you see us out with a can, you know, drop a buck in there. I mean, it certainly will help us, you know, to buy cake and ice cream and pizzas and things like that, so that those in the veterans, and now it's both men and women. It's not just old soldiers. These are, particularly from the most recent wars, there's women that are in those hospitals that have been damaged by war. So it's really quite a thing that we can do. I just wanted to ask Carin a little bit about, you know, you're coming on as the AmVets post commander. So what are you thinking about as going forward? You know, your term, 2 years, 5 years, 1 year. How's that work, and what's your responsibilities, and what do you plan to do to help the organization and hopefully the town?
Well, usually a commander at our post stays in for 2 years. I am extremely proud and honored to be working along with the Legion and the VFW. There are 3 organizations in our community that try and emotionally, financially, and physically support our veterans and their families, whether they be World War II or even up to the current day. All veterans and their families are welcome at our post, and as all the other posts also. We try to interact as much as we can with our fundraising and our events. And
where is the post?
The post is on Central Street, up by the new firehouse. And we've done a lot of work to the post. We do rentals if you have small parties or outdoor events. We've got an extremely large field out back behind it. Even if you want to run a local yard sale on our front lawn, we would never object to something like that. All organizations are welcome. I had the great honor of doing flag burning with the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts this past weekend. What an outstanding set of young people. And it's important to get the young people involved in our organizations, because every military family every family in the community is touched by war. But the military families have a much different lifestyle than the average family. And they need these organizations for various different reasons. And I'm extremely proud to say that all the men and women really have turned out and helped over the last few years. I have to send out a really nice thank you to my prior commander, Mike Baudet. He's been the backbone for a long time. He's had 6 terms as commander there. And as he's leaving me a very energetic and positive atmosphere. We have the Ladies Auxiliary and the Sons of Italy. The Sons of AmVets. Yeah. Wrong organization, guys. But anyway, that's a great organization too. But you're all welcome. And I encourage you to come down and visit. Just walk in and say, Carin invited me, and you're more than welcome.
Hey, Carin, can you talk a little bit more about the flag burning? I heard that, and I'm not really sure what you mean by flag burning. I mean, that's sort of, it's got a pit in my stomach. So what are you talking
Well,
about?
that's a proper way to retire a flag, the United States flag. We have a very unique tradition in this country where what we did was, there's 25 speaking parts, and Mike put it all together, outstanding job. We asked people to please bring their old tattered and worn flags to either the VFW, the Legion, or Town Hall, or the AmVets. The AmVets has a mailbox right outside, so if you're shy and you don't want to come into the post, just drop it off in a mailbox. And once or twice a year, either us or the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts do these ceremonies. And it's rather moving. It's going to be showing on Smack if I'm not wrong pretty soon. I don't know if it's finished editing it or not. But you might, it's worth taking a peek at. The Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts did an outstanding job. And again, our veterans agent for putting it together.
Hey, Bernie, if you have a little bit more to add on that topic?
Yes, as Carin mentioned, we have a small hall that can be rented for a very small price at the AmVets. The VFW, of course, as everyone knows, has a very large function room. We have a small one, which is ideal for a child's birthday party or a small function, or if you have very, very few friends, you could get together there. And thank you, Mike, for laughing. Also, the mailbox Carin mentioned, many years ago at another post, I saw a mailbox that was the flag receptacle, and I thought that was rather unique. So we were able to get one through Mike Bodette, and I had a local body shop sand it and paint it. And that is the flag receptacle at the AmVets post on Central Street, where you can literally put the flag in without getting out of your car. Also, I want to mention that we accept used clothing now, as Carin or someone mentioned, Mike mentioned, Mark mentioned, there are females as well as males. We accept clothing at the Veterans Office if you call first, but it has to be clean, neat clothing, no tears, no buttons missing. We don't want to embarrass anybody, but they do accept clothing like that if you call the Veterans Office. Maybe Mike will give out the number if he wants to accept more clothes.
Okay, so let's move on. This is sort of a hot topic this year, and it has to do with the memorial sign dedications. And I thought that I'd ask Mike again to lead us through what that process is. You know, particularly we have a committee and how it's set up in the town, and then I'm going to open that up to a few more discussions. And while you're talking, Mike, include a little bit about the basic requirements for signage. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, what it takes to be a veteran and to get a memorial sign dedicated to you, whether you can do it, most likely not, but how that all goes about. So if you could just start that off and, you know, give us the basic laydown on that.
Okay, sure. There is a policy that was developed in August of 2005. You know, I wrote the policy at the direction of the Board of Selectmen shortly after I became the Veterans Officer for the town. Basically, the requirement is you have to be a veteran, and you have to have 20 years of substantive community service, voluntary service that you provided to the town. For example, we've talked about some of the voluntary activities that we do here, so that would count as service. But what I do through my office as a paid employee, that wouldn't count as substantive service because it's paid service. And so that is a big requirement, 20 years of substantive community service. That could include, working with your, your religious organization, coaching Little League, being involved in town politics, just about anything that contributes to the betterment of the town, however you want to define that. There are exceptions to that policy. Obviously, if we had a soldier who was killed in action, who did not have enough, he didn't live long enough, he or she didn't live long enough to have 20 years of service. And the selectmen can override certain parts of the policy. So the process is an application which people can get from my office, and it's pretty self-explanatory. The application comes back, and the Memorial Square Dedication Committee then meets, and they'll make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen are the street commissioners. They have the final authority on this. And so I will then go before the Board of Selectmen, and most people that go before the Board of Selectmen, they're for approval of squares. And I will speak on the person who is getting the square and their family is there, and it's a nice process. And the dedication ceremony itself, I don't know if you want to get into that right now, because that's a whole other thing.
We can talk a little bit about
but
that.
That's the process. So if anybody
How many
sees
times
those
a
blue
year
signs.
do you do that, Mike?
Twice a year. We do it on Veterans Day and Memorial Day. Now, if there was a special circumstance, I think we had one where, well, we were fortunate that we did have it within that time frame, but we could always change that if there was a special circumstance. Somebody, you know, they may not live long enough to see their husband get the dedication or that type of thing, and we could move it up. So nothing's really cast in stone, but that is the basic process that we have, that we follow.
All right, so I just want to be clear for myself, because I'm a new member to the committee, and when we go to these meetings, let me tell you, there's 3 letters of recommendation, there's documentation that you've done your 20 years of service, and this is really taken seriously, because in the town, when you ride around in Stoughton, you can see these memorials. There's blue signs for veterans who served and then served the town again. So these are service-oriented people, and then obviously the more saddened ones are the killed in action. These are mostly men. I think they might all be men.
In Stoughton,
now,
yeah, they're all men. Yeah.
that were killed in action, and you know their lives were cut short. And again, if you look at Stoughton, Stoughton goes back to the Revolutionary War, where Civil War, where we've stepped up for the country, and you can see this, and it's a very serious thing that the community wants. The community, through the selectmen and through all of that process, wants to honor veterans. We know what it takes to make a country. I mean, make a country like the United States, and also in Massachusetts, particularly, it's very, very important that we've been here since before the country was formed. And so I think it's quite a ceremony. And I just want to bring up one other little thing. I know it's sort of a touchy thing right now, but we had an issue with one of the signs that was changed while just before Memorial Day. And I just wanted, I don't know if anybody has any comments on it, but one of the selectmen that was leaving office I guess commissioned or tried to have a sign of one of his family members, his uncle, changed. So he removed a sign of had removed. Again, I got to be careful how I speak about this. But anyways, he had a killed in action veteran, Peter Mears, he died in the Vietnam War. And both Peter and I served in the same outfit when we were overseas, and we were over there at the same time, even though I didn't get a chance to see him. But anyways, he took the sign down and had it copied by a sign firm, and then he added his uncle's name to it, Ken McCrisky, which many of the people in town know. They ran Ken's gas station on Drake and Canton for years, and then had it put up. But Ken was not killed in action, so the sign was black. It looked like he was, so it raised a little dust up. And fortunately, Joe was on this community forum last night, and he went through his rationale for what he did, and he also apologized to the community, to the veterans, and to the mayor's family. So I think the matter is closed, and I just thought it was worth saying here, and I don't know if anybody else has anything else to say in regards to that, but I just thought that we would mark that, seeing we're talking about veterans. Any comment?
I'll go along with what you said. We spoke about this at the beginning of the show, that we weren't going to press this manner. McCrisky went on last night. He said he didn't do anything wrong, but at the same time he apologized. I could have a number of issues about what he said last night. We used to have a saying in the old company I worked for, if someone gets themselves in trouble, and we would say they basically bottled themselves up like a 5-legged crab in a Coke bottle, and how they're going to claw their way out of this. The fact that he's apologized, at this point we can just move on. and let it go. So I'd agree with that, Mark.
Yeah, and I'd agree too. I think that apology is what was necessary. And you're living in a community like Stoughton, we all know people make mistakes. And one of the things that communities have is that an apology is usually what's required to address your neighbors, your friends, and certain organizations such as the veterans. And Joe did step up and do that. And I acknowledge him for that. I know it must have been difficult. Okay, so well, let's see, we've got a little bit of time left here. So we did the memorial signs, and okay, so let's get on to what you plan to do, Carin, with the new AmVets, your new role as the commander. What do you plan to do for the coming year or so?
Well, we've, in speaking with the auxiliary and the Sons, we've done extreme amount of work around the post itself, but now we're looking forward to some outreach projects. I'm not at liberty to speak about them at this time because they haven't been settled, but I'll be going out to the convention in June and meeting with some of my my comrades in arms and learning the role. Again, this is my first time being commander at the post. I'm following the lead of my predecessors. And again, I have a really good team of veterans that are highly motivated and energized to get out in the community and do a lot of outreach. So at this time, I really cannot say exactly what we plan on doing. But it is a very welcoming and loving environment that we have down at the AmVets. And the best thing I can do is come down, check us out. I think some of you young kids that just came back from Iran and Iraq, no matter what your issues are, we can help you. There's somebody at the post that has been there and done it, and you're not alone. Trust me, you're not alone. That's the biggest thing. Come and check us out, or even if you feel like going down to the VFW or the Legion. I know they're also loving and welcome down in those places, and they'll accept you with open arms.
Well, you know, the other thing, one of the things that I do with the veterans is I'm part of an organization called EDGE, E-D-G-E, the number 4 vets. And what they do is, it's an organization that was recently formed where they have a program, and I participated in 2, one out at the University of Lowell and the other one at Bunker Hill Community College, Lowell, and the other one was in Boston, or I think it's actually in Charlestown. But what we do is we partner employers that are looking to hire veterans. Like many large organizations particularly have hiring goals where they look to outreach to get veterans to come into their organizations. So what this Edge for Vets does is it works with the veterans to turn the military speak. You know, some of us know when you get a bunch of veterans together, they talk, you know, these crazy symbols and abbreviations that nobody understands. And when they actually are going to go to apply for a job and they're talking to a hiring manager or somebody from human resources and they start with that jibber jabber, it makes it very, very difficult for the business to interpret what the skill level really is. So we work with them for a couple of hours. Actually, it's an all-day event, and we work with individual veterans to help them transition their military experience to company-based experience, and then they go on, they get a little certificate, and the companies actually hire them to work. So as you can see with this veterans stuff, that there's people in this town that work and take this very, very seriously. To help veterans, to help them transition. And I'll just say a little bit more about my own family. Some of you might remember, but back after the Second World War, Stoughton, just before the end of the war, they had a poor farm in Stoughton. And it was down on School Street. So after the Second World War, with all the veterans coming back, what they did is they closed the poor farm, but all that land was turned into veterans lots. So my father came and he got a veterans lot for $10. That's all it cost for the lot. And he literally built his own house. on that lot. And all the neighbors on School Street down there built their homes, and they were all veterans, and they got the land for $10. So Stoughton, and when you think about this, I mean, now we're talking, what is that, almost 80 years? How long has it been since the Second World War? Stoughton has been very, very involved in supporting veterans. And it's something people should pay attention to and take some pride in. Carin, I just wanted to ask you talked about a couple of organizations that come along the I think it's Women's Auxiliary.
Women's Auxiliary.
And what was the other one?
The Sons of AmVets.
Oh, so what are these things? What's the criteria? What are those auxiliary? What do they do?
The Ladies Auxiliary, they support a numerous amount of causes. A little bit too much for me to list right now. But to be able to join the Ladies Auxiliary, you have to have been either a daughter, a granddaughter, niece of a veteran, whether it be male or female. And the sons is the same thing. You would have to be a son, nephew, or a grandson to join it. And it was developed or set up for a way to keep families together and support each other. And as I said earlier, it's very hard when you have a family member deployed anywhere in the world. And when I say anywhere in the world, our kids right now are in every nook and cranny of this world. And some are not very nice places. And the families are under a lot of stress. Now the media has really changed the atmosphere for a veteran and his family also. Used to be you'd have to wait 2 or 3 weeks for a letter or a phone call. And now you've got instant communication with your loved one. And sometimes that makes it even harder because you can see the stress and the atmosphere your loved one is actually in. So these people get together once a month, and they're like a family. And especially our auxiliary, they are like a family down there. If you just come and check out a meeting. I think you'll really find an open, welcome atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Bernie.
Well, I would like to talk about the fact that the AmVets District 6, which comprises Stoughton, Randolph, Avon, and Millis, meet once a month throughout the entire year. And my goals for the coming year, again, are to continue the 2 visits to the Brockton VA campus, to have at least 2 cookouts, if not more, to continue the Christmas parties, and again to bring them to Randolph. We call it an off-station get-together, and we have to rely on the Brockton VA campus having the bus available to bring about 30 to 40 patients over to Randolph. We enjoy these very much. Mike is involved, Mark is involved, and Carin will be getting involved. And again, it's a way to bring a little bit of a different attitude and pleasantries to those veterans, again, especially the ones that are long-term. I had another, and also, Mark, Mike Pazyra, the veterans officer, who's been a veterans officer for what, 10 years now, Mike?
12.
12? 12 years. Seems like 9.
But who's counting?
Right. Does a tremendous amount of goodwill to those veterans who aren't aware of the benefits that they may be applicable for. I talk to veterans all the time who are unaware of the process. They're unaware that they can go to the VA hospital. There is a little application process involved, but it certainly isn't difficult. That's my only means of insurance. But Mike treats these people with dignity and gets many of them, especially widows, a lot of benefits that they weren't aware of, which helps them immensely in their lifetime.
Yeah, so on that, some of those benefits, I mean, you talk about, so it's not just veterans, it's like you say, widows or even dependents. Mm-hmm. So I mean, is that criteria, is that something that's easily known, or do you really have to outreach within the community to to explain the benefits to.
It's amazing how many people don't know the benefits that they've earned. You know, and these are earned benefits. I always tell everybody who's in my office, we're not giving out cheese checks out of the Veterans Office. These are benefits that have been earned through military service. A lot of it is means tested, and some of it is based on disability. There are state and local problems. We have one of the larger budgets in the town. You know, we're not up at the level of fire, police, public works, and the school, but we have the largest budget in town hall, for example, for the veterans, and half of our cases are the surviving spouses of veterans. And those are all based on a means test. This is from a program called Mass General Law, Chapter 115. And so there's an income test and an asset test. And, you know, we're able to, you know, we literally can keep people in their homes, or at the very least, we can afford them some sense of dignity, so they don't have to make choices between medicine and, you know, eating cat food or that type of thing, which does happen. We've had people come in our office and they're, you know, they're crying, they're so grateful, and why didn't they know about this before? Often with poorer people, you know, the more the need, the harder they are to reach. And we can come to the other side where we get into federal benefits. And federal benefits, there are some means tests as well. But a lot of it is disability work. And I'll tell you, you know, Mark here, he's one of Stoughton's most decorated veterans. And, you know, obviously this isn't a forum to get into some of his experiences. But Mark has never filed a claim with the VA. We're working on something now. And so it's been all these years since Mark's come back, and he's never filed a claim. And I have a lot of veterans. They just left stuff on the table because they didn't realize, or they thought it was too late, or they thought they had to be a combat veteran, or this or that. If you're a veteran and you think you have an issue, you should just call my office, because all you know we can do is say no, and obviously there's no charge for anything we do. But there's a whole host of things, and I don't know if we have time to get into all that, but you know, means-tested benefits and benefits based on disability incurred during military service. And one thing I will mention, because Carin's here, you know, the largest group of veterans now, or the most quickly growing group of veterans are female veterans, and they're coming back now, and they have their own unique set of issues that the male veterans don't have. One of the things is military sexual trauma, MST. You've heard of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, TBI, traumatic brain injury, but MST, military sexual trauma, that's becoming a very, very big thing the larger the population of female vets gets.
What is your number, Mike?
My number at my office, 781-297. No, that's my home number. Forget about that. 781-341-1300, extension 9220. The boys in the booth can put that up over there.
You know, Mike, I wanted to add something to that also. Speaking as a woman, the Brockton VA Hospital has really come a long way. And I encourage any female veteran out there to go over there and check it out. It's not the same old boys club it used to be. They've got a lot more services for us now. And if you need it, you're not alone. As I said earlier, go, check it out. Or even come talk to Mike, or you can even come down to the AmVets and ask for Carin. They'll call me and I'll come and talk to you right at the AmVets post. I'm retired. And I live to serve. My family has been serving the community at all levels since I was a very young child. And this is what I truly believe in. So if you need the help, it's out there. And we're willing to help you get it. Right, Mike?
Absolutely. Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to bring up something that recently we went into the State House. And this is something that people should be very aware of. In Massachusetts, every town and city has a veteran service officer. And when we went there, we found out, like, I think it's the state of Nevada, they might have 2 service officers for the whole state. So Massachusetts has been behind that, and the legislature, our elected officials, support that, and they're always looking for ways to improve services to veterans. And when we went into a meeting to meet some of them in Boston, I can't remember, what was it, April, or when did we go in?
I'm having a mental block. When did we go in? What meeting was this
I
for?
think it was April.
I think it was April, but we had a meeting in Boston. We met the state senators and the House of Representatives that were in there. And one of the things that came up that was very, very surprising to me is spouses of veterans. So say you lived in California and you were a doctor. You were a spouse, either a male or a female doctor. And your spouse, your opposite, the military service member, got transferred to Boston to serve. So now the whole family moves to Boston. And then the veteran or the service person gets shipped overseas. So where does the money come from? Who's going to take care of that family? So now we have a doctor that's certified to practice medicine in California, but not certified to practice medicine in Massachusetts. So basically, that highly trained person has no opportunity to use their skills and abilities, and what they're left with is finding whatever job they can to support their family while the service member is overseas. So the Massachusetts legislatures want to change that. They want to say, hey, look, it's not for thousands of people. These are for very special situations where that person could practice their professional skills in services while their person is overseas and they need to have the income. So that's like what the state is up to. Another thing that was interesting is that when the guys and gals come home from services, many of them are highly trained in the military. They can drive trucks, they can use all kinds of equipment, they're skilled with computer services and things like that, and they come home, and before they can get a job in the industry, they have to get recertified. They have to take 18 months or 2 years to go back to school to learn what they already knew how to do, or what the military had trained them. So there's more effort going to be put into that too, where the veterans coming back from service will be able to use their skills and trainings that they received in the military without having to spend, another $10,000 or $15,000 to get recertified in the state to do what they could do, drive a truck, or get a special license and all that. So, I think that that's another hope, and that's something that we as a community can look out and say, yeah, these are the kinds of things that we need to do now. We've been at war now longer than I think even Vietnam. And I think 1% of the population is in the military of the whole country?
That's about right, yes.
About 1%. So what are we going to do with these people when they come back? How are we going to take care of them? How are we going to transition them back into civilian life? So these things become very, very important. And what I keep going back to Stoughton. I grew up here, and this community cares. They always have. They've cared for the veterans, and they look forward to making sure that we're accommodating. And we say we have the organizations to support them. We have a service officer that's probably one of the best in the state. We have outreach programs that we have individuals, community, citizens of the town that go out and really, really make a difference in this community and support the veterans. So I think it's important that people realize that this is a broad reach, and that there's individual citizens of the town and also organizations that are trying to represent and to make this a very, very welcoming community for veterans, and also that we can help them any which way we can. So I don't know if anybody else has anything else that they'd like to bring up. I'm just going to take a moment and go through my notes.
I'd just like to mention that there are 3 military organizations in Stoughton. We haven't mentioned the American Legion at all. And there's the American Legion, the AmVets, which stands for American Veterans, of course, and the VFW. The difference between these, the VFW, you have to have served at least 1 day in combat on foreign soil. The AmVets are open to any veteran with an honorable discharge, but the American Legion has different years that you have to have served in order to be eligible for the American Legion. I'm a member of the Legion, but I don't know the years. They're kind of convoluted. I'm not sure what they are. The American Legion is off of Prospect Street, by the way.
Well, also tomorrow, I'd like to put a shout out to Mr. Jerry Goulston at Pages. He's going to be having an event tomorrow between 11 and 2 at his location. Hamburgers and hot dogs, and all the proceeds will be going to the veteran organizations here in Stoughton. So thank you, Mr. Goulston. We truly appreciate all your support. He's been an outstanding supporter of our post, I personally know of.
Okay. And I have some good swag to give you that you can hand out.
Come on down and get some
I'll
good swag
give
and have a hot dog with
I'll give you
us.
some of that right now. You know, just following up, the American Legion thing that Bernie was talking about, you have to have served during wartime. You don't have to have participated in a campaign. The VFW, you have to have been in a campaign. With the American Legion, you just have to have served during wartime. Now, all three of the posts, they were all, I guess if I had to say, the VFW might be doing the best financially of them. All of the service organizations and all the fraternal organizations in town, you know, having difficulties to certain extents, I think. This generation is fraternal, and the last few generations aren't as fraternal as that World War II generation. A lot of it's social media, that type of thing. So you can go down the list, the 3 Portuguese clubs, the Sons of Italy, the Knights of Columbus, of course the AmVets, American Legion, and VFW. They were all not as financially secure as, say, as they used to be in the old days. But here in Stoughton, to have 3 military posts, and they're still functioning. You know, you can read in the paper, and well, not every day, but the VFW in Randolph just closed, and they've now merged with the AmVets post. And you read about these posts shutting down, and all of them, they had their free land, they were given their land, and they're not paying taxes, and they still can't afford to run their operations because of declining membership. A lot of the things with the veterans post, the veterans population is dropping like a stone with the passing of all of our World War II vets. We've been saying that for years, and there's not that many left. There were only 3 at our Memorial Day parade. The Korean War veterans are in their 80s. The biggest group of veterans now are the Vietnam era veterans, which would be, you know, like the 3 of us here. Bernie's a little older than us, but I think he qualifies for that younger part of the Vietnam thing. And Carin, of course, is much too young to have served during that time. But with that declining veterans population, there's an issue. And so the AmVets, one of the big things that keeps that going is the Sons of AmVets. They contribute a lot to that post and keep that post running. The VFW, they have a hall that they can rent out, so that contributes to their income. The American Legion, unfortunately, they didn't have the money to upgrade their hall when there was that Warwick fire. God, that's 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and subsequently the law came in that halls with such a capacity, I think it was 100 people, 100. They needed a sprinkler system. And they're located well off of Prospect Street, and it's a couple $100,000, I think, just to bring water in, let alone the sprinkler system. So they had to shut down their hall, so they've lost that source of revenue. And so a lot of the posts are suffering more financially than they used to in the past, but in Stoughton they're still vibrant. They're still going. And I'll give one more plug to Massachusetts. You know, most people, I think, maybe intuitively, you think of Massachusetts, you know, it's all blue politically, and you think of it's you know, a wussy state regarding veteran stuff. Massachusetts truly is one of the, well, it's not one of it, it's the best state providing veteran services to its citizens. Is Mark and Bernie mentioned earlier, we're the only state in the union that has every community represented by a veterans service officer. We have extremely strong ties with the JFK Federal Building, the Providence VA office, VHA. We have one of the best healthcare systems, veterans healthcare systems, VHA, Veterans Health Administration, the Boston system, West Roxbury, Jamaica Plain, Brockton, 5-star rating. We also have a major VA hospital in Bedford. There's one out in Northampton, and we're a small state geographically, so we're fortunate that our legislature and our federal officials too have been able to provide this benefit to Massachusetts. What Mark was talking about before I had a mental block, the Massachusetts Veteran Service Officers Association, which is the representative group of all the veterans officers, every year is a thank you to our state legislators. We have a legislative luncheon that we have. And it's attended by just about every state senator and state representative. And we thank them for their legislation that they continuously pass. Every year there's a veterans bill that tries to forward the interest of veterans in the community, and it runs a whole gamut of things. So, you know, way too many to mention, but we are truly the best state in the union for veterans benefits.
Mike failed to mention that he's the past president of the State Service Officers, and received a great deal of recognition for the superb job that he had done. I want to mention something. I was at the Brockton VA Hospital last week and met a man from Avon who has never been to a military post. He thought you had to be a member. I want to reiterate right now to make sure that the public knows you do not have to be a veteran to drop into the AmVets or the VFW or the American Legion. We'd appreciate it if you did, quite frankly. And also, last summer I had to do a follow-up on very minor surgery that had taken place. And I spend my summer weekends in Connecticut where I have a family cottage. So I had to go to the Providence VA Hospital rather than drive all the way back to Brockton on the weekend. I had to do this on a Saturday. I waited 3.5 hours for a 10-minute procedure. I couldn't believe it. Small little hospital, not that much help, and that's why I appreciate the Brockton VA Hospital even more. There's also West Roxbury, which has a wonderful hospital, and Jamaica Plain. The three of them are local, so we're very fortunate in this area because I met men at either West Roxbury, I believe, who traveled all the way from central and northern Maine, a 7-hour trip to get to the VA hospital. There was nothing closer, and then they stay overnight and go back on a bus.
One thing I'd like to also mention, one of the biggest fundraisers for all three organizations is the concession stand during the 4th of July fireworks. We rotated AmVets, VFW, Legion. Legion has it this year. If you want to support any of the posts and you're watching the 4th of July, please come to the concession stand. That money goes a long way to help people with our programs for all our veterans involved and their families. Thank you.
I just want to mention, Mike, when we were walking in the parade, there was an actual service member there. He looked like an Army guy, but he wasn't. Do you know what his name is?
Yeah, that was Dom Evangelista. I guess the Navy changed their uniforms.
Yeah.
I saw him, and I mean, I know him. Not very well, but I know him to recognize him, and I didn't recognize him because I know he's in the Navy. In the Navy now, they've ripped off the Army because now they have like Army uniforms. You know, Don was explaining to me that they don't want the blue anymore because if they fall in the water, he told me they can't see them. And I guess they were a different material because, you know, the Navy guys now, you know, they're not always out in the ocean. They're in the desert. He was in Bahrain. It reaches 130, 140 degrees. And so it's funny how things change. You look at the old greens that Mark used to wear in Vietnam. You know, I remember even when my son went to Iraq, they didn't have body armor. They had the old, well, they had body armor. They had the old Vietnam stuff that Mark had that really didn't do too well. And so it's amazing how the technology, even for uniforms and things like that, changes for the military. Everything's advancing, hopefully, for the for the
But
better.
I want to do a little shout out for this guy, Dom. Now, he's in the service now.
Yes.
So he was on leave from one assignment to the next. And his next assignment, he was going to be in the Baltic Sea. So I said, you know, this poor guy is going to, you know, you've seen from World War II, this is up, you know, where it's freezing cold in the North Atlantic, so that's where he was going to go to serve. But on his break, on his time off for Memorial Day, he's from Stoughton. What does he decide to do? He marches in the parade with the rest of us. So again, that's, you know, a shout out for that kid. And the other thing is that we're looking at each other, walking, you know, for a couple of hours in the marching in the parade, and I knew I recognized him somehow. And finally he said to me, you know, you taught me when I was in religious education. I said, oh, that's where I know you from. So like these connections, these young people are coming up and they're living like that, and still, Stoughton still provides service to the country. And I do want to do one little shout out for Phil Yatanis, Faxon Park. You ever see the flowers up there when we get ready for Memorial Day? He's been taking care of that for years. And he just does it, he just gets it done, puts in the flowers, makes the place look really nice, so when we have the ceremony there, it's very, very special. And you know, when you see him around town, yeah, give him a little thanks for taking care of that for the veterans. So anything else that anybody has?
Not really.
Well, no, sure. There's a lot of stuff we could talk about. You know, I would say, you know, definitely my office, we provide a lot of services. And even if you have some issue that you may not think is veterans related, for example, we know a lot about, you know, real estate tax exemptions that are offered by the town. The town, you know, as most people know, a new high school is being built, and last year the town voted a debt exclusion, and so $70 million has to be raised by the town. It's being raised through property taxes. So everyone this year, when they get their tax bill in July, that's going to be due on August 1st, I mean, you're starting out with probably at least, you know, a $300 or $400 amount that's going to be on your tax bill. And you know, one thing I do know, most people don't pay attention to town government. Those of you who are watching this now, you're the people who pay attention. But probably a good 80% of the people, you know, what they know about their town government is that the trash is picked up every Monday morning, and they sort of hold their nose when they go in to pay their tax bill. And then these things tend to come up as a surprise for them. So there are ways that we can maybe help defray the cost, to defray the cost of this tax increase. You know, certainly for veterans, but there are other tax exemptions. Town meeting was generous enough to pass two articles this year. One, we now have, and I would ask citizens to be generous on this, in your tax bills there's going to be an insert, and the purpose is for an elderly tax relief fund, if you will. I forget what the exact name of it's going to be, even though I presented the article. I should remember that. But what we're going to be doing is looking for some donations for people to donate money that we can then establish a policy to help defray the taxes for our elderly. And the other is we're going to have a veterans tax work-off program. I can see the time's running out, so I'm going to defer it to our host.
Okay, so that was, I think that we're almost ready to wrap up here. And what I would say is that, again, you know the people that are involved, particularly Mike, if you need assistance with any veterans issue, and Carin in her new role as the AmVets commander. These are two great resources for you, and just to find out more. And if you're looking, if you have a veteran, or you know a veteran, or a veteran spouse that needs help with finding a job or working, then they can contact me, because you know I'm a veteran and I like to do that sort of service. Thank you.
Thank you.